Good morning, everyone. I'm Roy McDonald. I'll be chairing today's meeting in the Development Committee. For anyone who hasn't attended one of these meetings before, the officers who provide and present our reports and offer technical advice sit either side of me at the top table. In the front of me, in the centre area, sit the members of the committee who will be making the decisions on the items on the agenda. Can the officers please introduce themselves?
Good morning. My name is Jeff Lyon. I'm the Development Manager.
Good morning. I'm Alice Walker. I'm the Planning Officer.
Good morning. I'm Lauren Gregory, Democratic Services Officer.
Good morning. Jo Ferner, Principal Solicitor.
Good morning. I'm Colin Rubin, Team Leader in Planning.
Good morning. I'm Anna Maria Ananash, and I'm a Planning Officer.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome members of the public in attendance and those viewing the meeting on YouTube. For those members of the public who have registered to speak, I'll call you to the front when it's your turn. Before we start the formal business, I'd like to draw your attention to some short notices. The fire alarm, we're not expecting a drill today, so if the alarm does sound, please follow the officers using the marked exits and make your way to either the car park in the front of the building or the flagpole at the rear. Please do not use the lift. Mobile phones, can you please ask that you turn your mobile phones at least to silent, if not off? And if required, we'll take a short break for tea or coffee if the meeting goes on after 11. Right, so do we have any apologies?
Thank you, Chairman. We have a few apologies today. We've got apologies received from Councillor Andrew Brown, Councillor Angie Fitch-Tillett, Councillor Paul Heinrich, Councillor Victoria Holliday, Councillor Gerard Mancini-Boyle, Councillor John Toy, and Councillor Adam Varley. And if I may, with the next item, Chairman, the substitutes who are present today, we've got Councillor Gary Bull for Councillor Paul Heinrich, Councillor Luke Patterson for Councillor Gerard Mancini-Boyle, and Councillor Callum Ringer for Councillor John Toy.
Thank you very much. Do we have any items of urgent business?
There are none, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Do we have any declarations of interest on today's agenda, please? Thank you very much. So we'll start with the officers' reports. Can we start on Cromer, please?
Good morning, members. This is application PF 231761, which seeks the redevelopment of the former tennis courts in North Lodge Park in Cromer. A similar application was previously submitted and considered at Planning Committee in June. A decision of deferment was reached. The application was subsequently withdrawn and resubmitted as PF 231761 with several design alterations. The application seeks the demolition of the former bandstand and storage building and the redevelopment of the tennis courts. The proposal consists of the erection of 2 new public toilet buildings, a community food hub, a community shed, a greenhouse with a potting shed and store, associated fencing to contain a community horticultural hub, curved walls with a canopy above for an entertainment space, and a multi-use area for pop-up markets, leisure activities, and associated on-site car parking and cycle parking with vehicular and pedestrian access. As you see, the application site is located within North Lodge Park towards the eastern end of Cromer Town Centre. It's a designated area of public realm and open space in policy terms. The site is located towards the front of the park, adjacent to Overstrand Road on the A149, and is accessed via Carriage Drive. So a map there for a bit more context. The park also forms the setting of the Grade 2 listed North Lodge. The former tennis courts and bandstand are considered to be an accessory to the asset. The site as existing is comprised of a 1950s brick-built bandstand and a large concreted slab. Both have been unused for several years and have fallen into a state of disrepair, although the concrete area remains level and in reasonable condition. There's some photos just to show you the site as existing. That's the bandstand. So the proposed block plan shows the locations of the proposed structures. To the northwest of the site are the proposed public toilets, which also include a changing places unit and an accessible WC. To the northeast are the proposed curved walls and canopy, which form the entertainment space. Below this, we have the horticultural hub, which is the fenced area containing a greenhouse, store and potting area and a community shed. A porter cabin is proposed to the southwest corner, which will be clad in vertical timber and sedum roof to match the other structures and would provide a food bank for the community. Vehicular access is proposed from Carriage Drive along the western boundary of the site. There is vehicular access secured with a lockable gate and a further additional pedestrian access. Space has been set aside for occasional parking and cycle racks have also been provided. The next few slides that will be shown are showing you a close-up of the plans of the structures. This slide shows the proposed public toilets. They're circular, clad in timber and zinc, and one will have a green sedum roof. The next one has a polycarbonate roof. Okay. This is the entertainment space. As I said, it's 2 curved walls, which will be clad in vertical timber and has a canopy above. The horticultural hub is formed of a secure tool store, a glazed greenhouse and an indoor potting area. There's also another sort of sheltered area for outdoor potting area, and the community shed will also be located in this area, secured within an area of fencing. Both will be timber clad with a sedum roof. That's the community shed. This slide shows us visualizations provided by the architect to give an idea of how the multi-use area could be used, from outdoor exercise classes, concerts, sports and recreation, and also an occasional pop-up market for the produce grown on site and any other small vendors. The key issues for consideration on the scheme highlighted there. In terms of design, the majority of the structures proposed are fairly temporary in nature. There would be low impact siting on the existing hard standing. Whilst concerns have been raised in the public representations with regard to the open land designation of the site, to recognise by officers that whilst the proposals would not enhance the open character of the site, there would be an enhanced recreational benefit to the proposal, allowing a currently underutilised area of park to be brought back into use and offers a number of recreational uses for the community. This is in line with CT1. Some heritage harm has also been identified as a result of the concentration of structures in this area. Whilst the harm identified must be given great weight, it's considered to be at the less than substantial end of the spectrum. Nonetheless, this harm has to be weighted against the public benefits accruing from the scheme. The number of public benefits associated with the proposal include the revitalisation and improvements to a currently unused area of park in order to promote and facilitate new recreational uses, as well as the provision of new public toilets, and also a number of flexible community uses, some of which would support the local economy, and all of which would ensure the viability of the park. Having regard to these benefits and affording the heritage harm identified great weight, it's considered that these benefits would outweigh the identified harm to the heritage assets. Consequently, the proposals would be compliant with paragraph 202 of the NPPF, which deals with less than substantial harm. Highways concerns have also been raised due to the vehicular access on site. We've worked proactively with the agent to reduce the number of vehicle movements on site. The frequency of any pop-up market would be limited, and traffic management plan has been submitted to manage these movements. Therefore, we would recommend approval of the scheme subject to the conditions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Next, we have public speakers from the town, Cromer Town Council. Can we have Patrick West? Thank you. You got 3 minutes, sir. If you just push the button on your microphone to make it live. Huh?
That's the one. I got it. Oh no, all right. Well then, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee for hearing me this morning in support of the North Lodge Park application. I just want to start by addressing the fact that we're looking at a 5 acre site here And within that 5 acres, the place that we're looking to develop is 0.4 acres. This has been disused for a long time now, probably as long as I can remember, having been a resident of Cromer for the last 52 years. I spent many days down at Kiddie's Corner, as I'm sure some other people did, on the toys and everything else there. The proposal we're bringing forward this morning, I think that we need to consider that the regeneration of the park, particularly that area, is essential to the residents and holidaymakers alike in Cromer to make this area once again outstanding and to draw people into that area of Cromer. Unfortunately, for a long time now, it's been disused. We've seen an increase in vandalism, disorder in the park, and I personally think that if that's redeveloped with the use of CCTV, which we now have in operation in the park, that this will obviously reduce that of the vandalism and the antisocial behaviour in the park and the gatherings there. I want to just move on to really a couple of things I've got written down here. The fixed activities proposed on the site are for the community shed, the food hub and the horticultural hub. Now, not only do these provide a place for people to attend, but also the mental health aspect of these places for people to go along and be supported and everything else by other members is great. These wouldn't, I think there was a misunderstanding at the last meeting that this would be very seasonal. And I can assure you that these facilities would be used 12 months of the year, not just for not just for 6 months or when we're in season, if you like. As far as the traffic management goes, I've worked very closely on that one because I deal with a lot of the traffic management problems in Cromer for events, carnival, Christmas lights, New Year's Day fireworks, things like that. So obviously I've had a good involvement in making sure, and I personally think that we would actually reduce the use of traffic management with a traffic management plan in the park of non-operational traffic coming in and out, because if you're there on a day, you pay.
Sorry, sir, you're 3 minutes. Yeah,
Sorry.
sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trying to avoid feedback from that other microphone. Thank you. The next speaker will be Mr. Folks. Thank you. You just come up. Push the button with a little speaker bit on it.
This one, yep. I think I have a little more than 3 minutes because I'm the only, yeah, okay, perfect. So I'm here today to speak for a family member who spoke in June when you were asked to approve an almost identical proposal, but you rejected it. You decided the conservation area wasn't suitable for wooden sheds, shipping containers, and a polytunnel. Now you're being asked to approve almost the same thing. A porter cabin built to last 60 years replaces the shipping containers, but looks remarkably similar. And there's a greenhouse instead of a polytunnel. Just 2 small changes. NNDC has let this land fall into decay. Now they want to pass it on to Cromer Town Council, who will pass it on to charities to develop. The charities must provide everything: buildings, fencing, electricity supply, all at huge cost. Because this land is public realm and there's public benefit, you've been told this is okay. But this land is also open space, and so there are more rules that need to be followed, and they haven't been. The National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 98, says there must be robust and up-to-date assessments of what open space sport and recreational provision is needed. This hasn't been done for North Lodge Park. In fact, it's 11 years since the last official report. Paragraph 99 advises open space should not be built on unless it's surplus to requirement, or the development is for alternative sports and recreation, the benefits of which clearly outweigh the loss. All of these charities and organisations provide benefit. The Community Food Hub is a brilliant resource, but it doesn't count as recreation or sport. Their porter cabin is for retail. Low-cost food is sold to members. In other Norfolk locations, these hubs operate from shops. Market stalls are also retail. Open space mustn't be lost to retail. This land is also a conservation area. It sits next to Grade 2 listed North Lodge. Here's the most important rule. Policy EN8 promises the character and appearance of conservation areas will be preserved, enhanced, and encourage the highest quality building design. The highest quality building design. 2 large sheds, a greenhouse, and a porter cabin. Really? Is this the highest quality? Unsurprisingly, the conservation officer has serious concerns. He writes that the new larger greenhouse would exacerbate the relatively high concentration of structures, adding that there are concerns about the appropriateness of utilitarian-looking buildings in such a sensitive setting. Finally, he writes that harm would be caused to the appearance and character of the park, and thus to the setting of the Grade 2 listed North Lodge building, and to the overall significance of the Cromer Conservation Area. His advice is great weight must be given to the conservation of heritage assets, irrespective of the level of harm. He refers you to the National Planning Policy Framework, Rule 202. Please consider all of these rules very carefully. Paragraphs 98, 99, Rule 202, and Policy EN8. Your verdict should be the development is too highly concentrated. The buildings are inappropriate and they'll harm the whole of the Cromer Conservation Area. Please vote against this harm. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next we got Mr. Richard Wall. You just come up. Thank you, sir. Little button 2 or 3 from the right. Yeah, the little voice, the one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Richard Wall. I'm chairman of Cromer Community Shed. Old people can be a real problem. Lots of them complain they're lonely, and a hardcore of them, mainly men, don't like the traditional remedies. They don't like going to coffee mornings, knit and natter, and afternoon tea. Over 20 years ago, the Australians found that if you set up a workshop where they could pop in, they could mend things, make things, sit and drink tea and coffee. After a few weeks, they started to talk to people, and after a few months, they weren't lonely anymore. In Australia, for over 20 years, there has not been a single suicide of a member of a men's shed across the whole of Australia. Our suicide rate is between 10 and 11 per 100,000, which is a national disgrace. The people of Cromer deserve us, and we want to help the people of Cromer. We're helping people who are not just lonely at the moment, we're helping people with a range of mental conditions. People with PTSD, someone with paranoia, and we're actually helping these people. And if you'd see us in action, you'd realise how much we're helping. We have a repair cafe where we mend things, and we find now that people pop in with things to the repair cafe and end up staying for most of the day because they enjoy the lovely, friendly atmosphere. Please grant this planning.
Thank you, sir. Next, we got a speaker, Mr. Martin Cole. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman and committee members,
First of all, I'd like to apologise because some of the things I'm going to say now will be reiterated from what Mr. Wall has just said. I want to talk about the Cromer Community Shed. We can talk about the building, what it should look like, where it should be, how it should be built, and why it should be built. And does it affect the local area? There is a greater concern, and that is what it should be used for, and do we need it? However, it should not just be seen as somewhere for people to go to make and mend things, but then it is. It is not just making and mending things and objects. It is a place to meet with new friends, new opportunities to talk and help others to mend things that may be broken in their lives. I cannot emphasize this point enough. We have two members, one who suffers from paranoia, the other from PTSD, and they did not want to mix with people, found it hard to go outside. Now, after a short time with us, they are valued members of our team, doing everything from keeping us hydrated to painting, sorting out our stores, and generally getting involved with us and our visitors. This is also reflected in other aspects of their private lives and social activities. They feel more confident in going outside, mixing with people, going to church, and being valued members of society. All of this at no cost or burden to the local mental health services or extra stress on the overburdened National Health Service. We help each other, we listen, we have chats, we are a support group for each other, a chance to have a break from home life stresses. My wife is disabled with Parkinson's, and I've wanted a chance to chat to others about this and get support when I need it. The current government is at the moment considering appointing a new minister solely to investigate the issues of men's mental health. The under 50s suicide rate is now the biggest single cause of non-medical related deaths. No member of the Shed Network has committed suicide in its 20 years of being active. We are growing our membership all the time, and to quote from the film Field of Dreams, build it and they will come. It will become a warm and friendly place for all. Our local community needs a place like this, and we should not always look at every venture as what it can do for our valued seasonal visitors. We also need to be aware of what our residents' needs are. People need mental health 365 days of the year. It is not a seasonal thing. Despite all my points on the health and well-being benefits the shed will bring, we also do need to make and mend furniture, etc. And a repair cap has been very popular and will be even more so when we're in the centre of town and easy, accessible to all. This helps in reducing items to go into landfill, again, saving costs to the local council. After 20 plus years of inactivity on this small plot of land, let us make this opportunity to give us a lasting legacy to the town, to the residents, and to the well-being of those who may use it and find a benefit in doing so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members.
Thank you very much, sir. Next speaker we got is Mr. Rick Goldsmith. Thank you very much, sir. Next, we got the local member, is it Emma Spagnola?
Excuse me, I have got a cold, so if I start coughing in the middle, I do apologise. Good morning, Chairman and Development Committee members. I'm speaking not only as the project manager, the ward member, but also the Mayor of Cromer. As I mentioned before, the main reason for this development is to bring a rundown piece of land back into use. The hard standing has been unused for approximately 20 years and has been a blot on the landscape on the east end of Cromer. The word that has always been used for this new development is community, not just on this piece of ground, but to the area local to the hard standing, bringing more footfall to the park and retail outlets at that end of town, which do suffer. Toilets, my favourite subject. There are no toilets above beach level at the east end of Cromer, and certainly no changing places. We have a brand new, wonderful play park on North Lodge Park, but no toilets nearby for children to be taken to. If you want to shop in the east end of Cromer, you have a significant trek to the nearest conveniences. Not always practicable if walking doesn't come easy to you, or if any illnesses that affect digestion or the like these people have. The food hub. In the COVID pandemic, it was surprising to see how many families, elderly and infirm, live in poverty in Cromer. As a member of one of the local charity, Cromer Cares, it was very evident and it came through very quickly. This food hub, which is to be a porter cabin clad in the same wood as the community and partner sheds, this will give dignity back whilst not having to go to a food bank and ask for food because they need it. Community shed you've heard about the Community Shed. I can't rave enough about this organisation and what they do for Cromer. They get people, obviously got people out at home, combating loneliness, helping mental health, fixing and making stuff, and giving them worth to make them feel as if they've still got a space in the world. The potting shed at North Lodge Park is vastly underused. Without the Friends of North Lodge Park, it would look terrible. This fab group of people want to grow plants for the park and also to sell for upkeep at the park. Another group who get out and make their piece of Cromer better for us all. As you can see, the polytunnel has been changed to a potting shed. I believe it was a live roof, although I understand the Friends of North Lodge Park are looking for volunteers to cut the roof with a lawnmower. Get in touch if you can help. We have predominantly spoken about the older population, and although the stage is there for everyone, how wonderful it would be to listen to the same acoustic music by local talent, entertainment for us and experience for them. Who knows, we could have the next Ed Sheeran living in Cromer or the surrounding villages. Not only music, but travelling theatres. We have productions which have been successfully held in the park for a few years. It would be great to just give them their own space. The pop-up market, not for large businesses, but for Wendy, who knits and wants to take it a little bit further, or Daniel, who thinks he has a business idea but wants to try it out before looking for a permanent base. Let's encourage those who want to help themselves. The Town Council will have the lease of the North Lodge Park House stand-in and will be contributing funds for the toilets and the utilities alongside the charities, and Cromer Town Council have regular meetings so that we can all work together, because that is what community does. The benefits far outweigh the negatives, and I beg you, please give us a chance.
Thank you, councillor. The next is councillor Boyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and the committee members. The area we're discussing this morning has been disused for around 20 years. We used to go when it was a sit and ride area. It's a blot on the park now. And if you wander through, you'll see youths currently congregate around the area. And I've found evidence of substance misuse recently. On Monday, I randomly spoke to a resident who overlooks the park. He and his neighbour will no longer walk through the park in the evening. And he welcomed the new project because he feels it will bring people back into the park. And he was of the opinion that the extra footfall and the new use will discourage such behaviour. Over the lifetime of the park, from when it started originally, there have been other uses and suggestions for the area, including a paid amusement area once, none of which was successful. This project does provide flexibility and to adapt for our ever-changing needs in this society. It will bring people back to the park. They'll come to the area and then they'll go and sit on the grasses and enjoy the rest of the park. The current plan for the area will bring people into the park for leisure, and the toilets, as people have said, are desperately needed for young and old alike. It's too far a walk otherwise. The open performance area will encourage live theatre back to the park and live music, something that traditionally the park was, really well known for. The food hub helps those who struggle to buy food. We know there are many, many people within our towns that do struggle. The community shed does enable people with mental health issues to re-engage with daily activities and is desperately needed. And without the garden area to grow the much needed plants for the park, we won't have a lovely park. The volunteers have to have somewhere to grow their plants and to enhance the park. And the pop-up shops will be only infrequent, but they will allow small local people to make a start in a sustainable way, to try it out. I've had tourists, I run a guest house, I've had tourists stay in my guest house, and they've come to the park over the years, and they're really truly saddened because they came as children and to see it as it was in real disuse. I had one couple who refused to come back to Cromer because they were so sad that it hadn't got the vibrancy it had. And I know we live in changing times, and I feel that this project does capture the essence of the original park brought into today's changing world. It's still the essence of what North Lodge Park was meant to be. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Boyle. Councillor Adams.
Thank you, Chairman. So I just first of all wanted to focus on the heritage considerations in respect of the innate policy and the setting of North Lodge, which is actually a former satellite office of the District Council. It's a Grade 2 listed building. And I just wanted to offer balance to the earlier input there, that the Conservation Officer has found that this would result in less than substantial harm. The officer has also recognised the improvement upon the previous planning application, such that it adheres to the relevant policy. And I do feel that timber cladded structures would be appropriate in this setting. But I just ask you to think about this in reverse. So if we had the current proposals in place and various community activities in, as was earlier pointed out, a relatively small space compared to the rest of the park, and we were to put in a planning application to make it a bare, overgrown concrete pad with a dilapidated shelter or bandstand, I should say, that clearly wouldn't contribute towards the setting of Grade 2 listed North Lodge. The applicants are in fact the owner of that building now, and they've taken great care to look after it over many years and to considerable expense as well. So I certainly don't feel they would do anything to harm the setting of that asset. But it also has to be weighed up against the landscape impact. And I think you have to weigh up the positive impact of use of the park and all these benefits that are emerging. The park does have to change. A few years ago there was the development of the new footbridge in the park, which is a modern design and structure replacing a more traditional structure, but that's benefited and brought connectivity back to the park. As has been pointed out, there's flexibility here with the possibility of music, small events, community activities, economic activity. I still think there's room as well for informal youth activity and sport as well. The site is currently used for that sort of thing in terms of skateboarding, but it's not so invasive that it doesn't allow for all sorts of flexibility of uses. And I think that will develop in time, particularly with the partnership of community groups that is present. And I certainly agree with what's been said over antisocial behaviour. We have had an antisocial behaviour issue in this park that's grown since various assets have been closed. And I think you can see this in the context of achieving regeneration in the park as a whole. The District Council recently leased the former collector's cabin. It's now an ice cream outlet. There's proposal at Seaview. I mentioned the bridge a little while earlier. And I think there's much more to come potentially with the possibility of outside funding. Traffic management was also raised as a concern previously, but I do feel their plans here exceeds other businesses on site. They've got potentially a closed gate. They've got traffic management around events. All vehicle access, and I don't recall this being mentioned in the plan or elsewhere previously, are tempered slightly by the placement of speed bumps that are on site. But actually the Town Council, probably more than anyone alongside the Friends of North Lodge Park for some decades now, have raised more concerns than others in respect to vehicle access. So I really do think they will be good custodians in that respect. And lastly, I just wanted to point out that really the only reason we're here in respect to this application is that we have a policy that applications on NNDC land come to this committee. Bear in mind, we have officer recommendations of approval, and there is not a significant groundswell of objection to this planning application. So I would urge you to approve it today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adams. So we move on to members of the committee, please. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chairman. I welcome the new and revised application, and the benefit of public convenience is fantastic. There's quite extensive use of cladding, and sometimes it talks about cedar cladding, sometimes it's not mentioned. So I didn't know if it can be conditioned that cladding is all of the same type of timber, and because curved walls are clad in cedar, toilets are clad in cedar, but the glass house and potting shed the type of timber is not talked about. Should that not be cedar as well? And the food hub, should that not be clad in cedar? Or have I missed it?
Sorry, no, I think it is on a plan or somewhere that everything will be clad in vertical timber cladding to match, so they all match, all the buildings will match the same type of cladding. We could, you know, condition that that is a material, but that is what has been proposed.
Thank you. I couldn't see that from the agenda I've got here, but that's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and thank you to all the speakers this morning and the officer for presenting a good and balanced report. It's difficult to see what possible harm we could do to this space with these buildings and what they're going to be used for. The speakers this morning have said about the well-being of the people of Cromer, and it's a much needed thing that we've got here, as well as the toilets that Councillor Spagnola has spoken about, which are much needed in the East End here since the previous toilets were closed. I think the good that this will do far outweighs any possible harm to the park in general, and certainly I would like to propose the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Hankins.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm not familiar with the actual site, but I am familiar with the men's shed in North Walsham. And that has proven to be extremely successful, particularly for lonely people that are widowed or whatever. And it has enabled people to regain some respect, some interest, etc. I commend the applicants' pragmatic solution to what is actually a derelict site, and with community funding under enormous pressure at the moment. I think this is a pragmatic solution to a difficult problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Becker.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a really good application, and it's clearly an improvement on the site at present. I know that Cromer's men's shed do an outstanding job, as do many men's sheds across the country. I just want some clarification on funding. Is this going to be funded by Cromer Town Council and charitable means, or is it going to come back as a funding application to develop this site to North Norfolk District Council?
We don't have specific details with the application. I mean, the funding itself isn't directly a planning related matter. So we as a development committee couldn't be influenced by how this development was to be funded. It's whether the principle of the development is acceptable in planning terms. That's really what we need to consider as members. Obviously, if there's discussion about funding from the council or any other party, that would be in other committees and other things to decide. So it's not really a matter for us to get involved in today, I'm afraid.
I thought that might be the case, and thank you for the answer. But, I would like to see this funded in the way that has been suggested by the town council and by charitable means. Thank you.
Councillor Toy.
Firstly, I'd like to say thank you to the members of the public that have put in their opinions, and that really helps with trying to decide. But all I wanted to say was, in my observations, this land has been neglected and uncared for many years, which many people have said, and has become a bit of an eyesore. I remember this area many years ago, back in the 80s, when I was much younger. And one of my children used to go to the Seaview nursery, and lovely place to be. And quite often I would pick her up and we would stay around and enjoy the area. I'd take a sandwich and we'd sit and have something to eat. And it was also an area that people would deliberately walk through because it was enjoyable. It was lovely surroundings, even though it wasn't very big. But they just used to make the time to go and enjoy it. To me, the choices are simple. We either continue to let this area decline, or develop this area into something that's beneficial to locals and visitors and something that we can all enjoy. It has so many purposes from what I can see. So I am happy to vote a big yes to this application today and look forward to the area's transition.
So councillor Fisher proposed it. Does that mean you're seconding?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Thank you. Councillor Bull.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just have a query. I take on board, and thanks everybody who's come and spoken today. It does enlighten us onto the history and what's proposed. The retail aspect that was raised, we've got in here a maximum of 2 pop-up markets a month, which, yeah, great. No sizing on these, I mean, and when it's going to be, because you do have a market on a Friday, I believe it is, in Cromer already. And I think it's a great idea, pop-up, gets people there, you know, dip your toe in the water, etc. I know we've tried it in other places and it does work. But what sort of stalls are we looking at size-wise, and how frequently, how many stalls would we be looking at in that area? Would it have a negative impact? That's the only downside that I can see. The rest of it, I think, is a well thought out, good plan.
From the plan submitted, I think in the design and access statement goes into a little bit more detail within terms of the market. As Councillor Spaniola said, it is intended to be very small pop-up market. There's only parking provision for 7 vehicles on the site, so it wouldn't be anything very big. It's largely for sort of, you know, the community groups to you know, grow flowers and you know, anyone who wants to come and sell a little something. It wouldn't be and I think they've noted that the other market, so it wouldn't clash with any other market.
Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you, councillor. Councillor Ranger.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much to everyone who's contributed this morning to the conversations. I think I'm just going to sort of talk a little bit about public space, and what one of the speakers I think mentioned, you know, about how we protect public space. And I think what we have to think about when we consider this is the value that that public space brings to the community. And what is outlined here in front of us brings a lot of value. The performance area, I think I'll touch on. We've spoken in depth about the men's shed and the aspects, so the wellbeing aspects we'll get from that, but also from the cultural and the arts side that would be provided through the performance area. I have some experience in organising sort of small music events elsewhere in the district, and so much potential there for all sorts of different things, from music to theatre, and I think that would be really, really positive. We can't protect the piece of land that's there, really, can we? I mean, it's an eyesore. We need to do something to improve that, and this will undoubtedly improve that, so I'd be happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. If nobody else has got anything, we've got a proposer and a seconder. Can we take it to vote?
Thank you, Chairman. So just to confirm, members are asked to vote for the officer's recommendation or in consideration. Councillor Beattie?
For.
Councillor Bull?
For.
Councillor Fisher?
For.
Councillor Hankins?
For.
Councillor Patterson?
For.
Councillor MacDonald?
For.
Councillor Neverway?
For.
Councillor Ringer?
For.
Councillor Toy?
For.
And Councillor Vickers?
For.
That's unanimous, 10 votes for. The vote is carried.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming in. Thank you. Thank you. Can we move on to item 8, which is West Raynham PF 231004? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, members. My name is Anna Nash, and I'm the planning officer, and I'm also the presenting officer this morning. This application is agenda item number 8 on page 21 to 32 and associated slides. The application reference is PF/23/1004. The application here before us proposes to demolish an existing workshop used as auto repair garage known as West Raynham Auto Clinic and erect a 2-story detached dwelling at Massingham Road in West Raynham. This application has been called in for your consideration for the reasons set on page 22. Next slide. The site location plan situates the application site in the village of West Raynham, 6 miles southwest of Fakenham. West Raynham is not identified as a service village, and therefore, for policy purposes, it is designed as countryside. Next slide, please. As you can see on this slide, the application site is adjacent to a group of 3 properties and also at an intersection between 2 local roads, Massingham Road and Station Road. Next slide. The aerial view of the site allows us to see the auto clinic in the context of its wider context. As you can see on the slide, the garage is located in close proximity to both the former RAF West Raynham and a business park. Next slide, please. As stated on the previous slide, the garage is adjacent to a business park that currently hosts approximately 13 businesses. In conjunction with the neighboring Enterprise Park, the garage is located near the former RAF West Raynham, where 13 buildings hold a Grade 2 listed building classification. The Conservation Officer found the proposed development not to have an adverse impact on the environment surrounding the Grade 2 listed buildings to the south. Next slide, please. The district contains 4 former defence establishments, and West Raynham is one of them. We know that such establishment would have created significant levels of housing despite the fact that key services and facilities are lacking in this area, which would make such site an unsuitable location for new housing. Due to the site's isolation, any new residential development would lead to increased car journeys and would not be in conformity with the settlement order. The red crossed hatched area on the policies map is defined as an airbase technical area, indicating where employment development is focused. The surrounding area is identified as countryside policy area, including the application site. Next slide, please. The initial photograph serves as an introduction to the committee of the application site looking northwards. As you can see from this photo, the garage is a single-story unit, semi-detached from the neighboring property on the left side. The applicant has been using the verge for parking the cars associated to the business. However, this area is not part of the site. Next slide, please. The 3 photos on this slide seek to visually introduce the garage and the network around the site. The first photo aims to introduce the garage and the existing access onto the site from the east. This image depicts the link between the garage and the adjacent semi-detached property on the left. Both the garage and the neighboring property exhibit comparable materials and share a single-story design. Photo 2 captures the south side of the garage, situated at the intersection of 2 local roads. It provides a front-facing perspective of both buildings, highlighting the architectural features of both the garage and the adjacent bungalow. The third photo provides a wider perspective of the area facing eastwards from Massingham Road. It offers an overview of the access point leading to the business park and the former RAF site. Next slide, please. This slide shows the existing front and rear elevations of the garage and the block plan of the site. And as you can see from the drawing, the current garage structure is semi-detached from the neighboring property known as the Old Stores, which is located on Massingham Road. Next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed front and rear elevations and the proposed block plan of a two-story dwelling. In terms of the proposed materials, the proposed scheme seeks to use red brick, horizontal timber cladding, complemented by a pitched pantile roof. The proposed dwelling would be set back into the side with a gravelled area to the front with parking and turning provision for a minimum of 3 car spaces. The site is presently accessed via Station Road as per the proposed block plan. Highways found this present setup to be acceptable as it does not affect the current traffic patterns. Next slide, please. The slide shows the proposed ground and floor plans, and you will note that this is a 4-bedroom property. Next slide, please. The officer recommendation is to refuse the proposal based on the grounds outlined on page 30 of the agenda. The main reasons for refusals have been marked in red, and they include the principal development, design and amenity, GRAM's neutral neutrality. The proposed dwelling would be in an area designated as countryside, where there is a general presumption against residential development and in a location with poor access to full range of basic services. The future occupiers would therefore be dependent on the car in order to access such services. The proposal would be an unsuitable development. A single dwelling in this location is unlikely to significantly enhance the local rural community vitality. The modest contribution in terms of economic and social benefits would outweigh the strategic policy conflict. In the opinion of the local planning authority, there is no justification to permit this dwelling in the countryside, which would be contrary to policy SS1 and SS2 of the North Norfolk core strategy. The second issue of this scheme is the proposed design. The proposed development by virtue of the building's overall size, scale and location would result in an unsympathetic form of development appearing to be out of place and excessive for the available plot, particularly concerning its proximity to the neighboring property on the left with a mere 2-meter separation between them. The constraints of the width of the proposed plot means that the new dwelling would be in close proximity to the existing neighboring dwelling to the left, which would constitute an overdevelopment of the site. The proposed dwelling would not be considered suitable design for the context in which it's set. Accordingly, it is considered that the proposed development will be contrary to policy and 4 of the North Norfolk core strategy. The site lies within the zone of influence of a number of European sites. The proposed net gain of one dwelling would trigger the requirement for a financial contribution towards the strategic mitigation package in accordance with the North Norfolk North Green Infrastructure and Recreational Impact Avoidance and Mitigation Strategy, also known as GRAMS. The GRAM strategy applies to all new residential and tourist-related growth, and this proposal has been identified as a qualifying development under GRAMS. Mitigation for the proposed development is therefore required in form of 1 RAMS tariffs payment. The applicant has failed to demonstrate that the proposed development would not result in adverse effects, either alone or in combination, on the integrity of European sites arising as a result of the development, including in relation to recreational disturbance. In the absence of suitable mitigation measures to address likely significant effects, the proposal is contrary to requirements of policies SS4 and EN9 of the North Norfolk core strategy. The proposed development comprises overnight accommodation that falls within the catchment of the broad special area of conservation and Rama site, and is likely to have an adverse impact on European designations, require mitigation in relation to nutrient neutrality. Based on the net gain of one dwelling, the development proposed is considered to be qualifying development and subject to nutrient neutrality requirements. The applicant has failed to demonstrate that the proposed development would not result in adverse effects either alone or in combination on the integrity of European site arising as a result of the development, including in relation to nutrient neutrality. In the absence of evidence to rule out likely significant effects and in the absence of suitable mitigation measures to address the likely effects, the proposed development is contrary to policy N9 and EN 13 of the adopted North Norfolk core strategy. And the approval of the application would conflict to the legal requirements placed on the legal planning authority as competent authority under the Conservation of Habitats and Species Regulations 2017. Having considered the benefits and the harm associated with this proposal, together with the policy conflicts that outweigh the benefits, officers consider the proposal to be recommended for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report.
Thank you.
Tony Michael, please. Thank you very much. That's good. So we've got no public speakers. Did the ward councillor, have you?
So just to confirm, Chairman, we've got no town or parish speakers, no objecting speakers or supporting speakers. The local member is not present today and I haven't received any written representations from them. I don't believe any other officers have received a written representation further from the local member.
Okay, thank you. That's unfortunate. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chairman. I support and propose the officer's opinion. Thank you.
Is that a proposal? Thank you very much. Councillor Vickers.
Just before I make a decision on this, I'd just like to ask a few questions. So just a general point to planners about cars. North Norfolk is mostly rural villages, and those of us who live in the rural villages use our cars. I mean, unless you live in Cromer, how many people came here today by car? So it does rather great when, you know, this issue of the car, in an ideal world, we'd all be able to cycle or get public transport, but that isn't happening. And so it does rather great. I'm not talking about this particular planning application, but in general, this issue about cars. And the point about the neighbouring development, well, at the moment it's attached to a rather tatty derelict garage, and I just as an ordinary member of the public, I'd rather have a detached house next to me than be attached to a tatty derelict garage, and I do rather worry that that's going to deteriorate further and not really become an eyesore. The other point I would like to ask, and I'm sorry that I don't know this, but who pays the GIRAMs? Is it the applicant or is it North Norfolk District Council? Thank you very much.
Okay, just to come back on the principle, I mean, I do take your point. I mean, we live in a rural area. Lots of people have to use their car to get access to day-to-day services. But what we as a planning authority need to try and encourage people to do is to build houses in more sustainable locations, because actually if you build in isolated locations, you are setting people up to be reliant on the private car for access. So actually we can direct development, which we're trying to do through the local plan and the new local plan, to more sustainable locations. The need to travel by car will be less, and you'll have reasonable alternatives. Not to say you will always use use your foot or get on your bike, whatever, but having that alternative option is what we're trying to do in terms of the hierarchy of development in the district. And that's really what the local plan is trying to achieve, the sustainable development.
Could I just come back on that point? Because I'm absolutely 100% behind the ideal, but if you don't build in villages, then you're going to get dying villages. And and North Norfolk is mostly villages. So I'm 100% behind the ideal of avoiding usage of car, but you know, we also need to support our villages.
Okay. Sorry, and Councillor Vickers also asked, I believe the applicant pays for GIRAMs, is that correct? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Bill.
Thank you very much, Chair. Quick question, is this a functioning garage at the moment? So the vehicles that are no longer going to go there are going to offset the fact that somebody's driving a car there? You're going to downside more vehicular access and movement going to a garage that's functioning than you are of one car at a house. I do think, and I take your point, that eventually you strangle the life out of and I would much rather, my only comment is I don't think it's fitting the house. It doesn't fit in with the remainder of the village. If it was a bungalow, maybe spread out a little bit more, not a double story 4-bedroom, I might be a little bit more sympathetic.
Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I take those points on board. However, the officer has pointed out that this goes against a number of our own policies, and we can't get away from that fact. And therefore, I will second the motion.
Councillor Hankins, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm struggling with this one. I understand that it is part of the council's policy to convert disused or moribund properties into housing properties, given the huge shortage of housing. Notwithstanding the fact that the officer, who's done a very good job on this, thank you very much, it highlights the fact, to me anyway, that the application was not very well prepared. There are numerous sort of advice in here to say that the application did not demonstrate, the application did not do this. Is it the fact that this would have stood a better chance if the application had been made more professional?
I wouldn't use the term professional, but I mean, I think they've applied to demolish the building and rebuild. Now, had they applied to convert existing buildings to a dwelling, then that would have been a different policy consideration to what we're talking about now, because conversion is permissible in the countryside and the policy SS2, subject to meeting certain criteria. Now, the red line bit in policy is that we've got an objection on nutrient neutrality and also on GIRAMs. So they're almost sort of non-negotiable points. We can't, as an authority, well, we can, but it would be unlawful, grant permission for the development without those issues being resolved. So without the GIRAMs tariff payment and without nutrient neutrality being resolved, because the applicant currently hasn't demonstrated that it's going to be nutrient neutral. So we as an authority couldn't grant permission currently without having certainty on the impacts of granting that permission. So setting those aside, if it's just matters of principle and design, the principle is saying it's a new dwelling in the countryside, it's not a conversion. And I say we've got concerns about the design that's been put forward. That's not to say that a more acceptable design couldn't be achieved. It's just that we have concerns about what's before us now. Of course, the applicant's entitled to appeal the decision if members wanted to refuse it, and also they could come back and submit another application. But there's a couple of obviously fundamental issues they need to get over before we could get to a positive outcome on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that answer.
Yes, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to echo a bit what Councillor Hankins said, actually. I don't feel that it's a very robust argument for it, and it's very limiting in detail, I think, just in terms of me trying to make a decision on this. Acknowledging that there are policy differences, you know, I haven't got a big objection to, you know, putting a dwelling on that location. If one could be fitted in better within the existing setting. So as much as I would be against this as it stands, that's not to say that something couldn't come back in a more appropriate form. I just wanted to ask a question about nutrient neutrality and in relation to the objection that came in about the septic tank. So reading into this proposal says that it will come up, the new dwelling would have come away from this using the shared septic tank and go into mains sewage. On one hand, it says that that is an acceptable agreement, but is it that removing of it from the septic tank and going into main sewage that makes it against nutrient neutrality?
Either way that you dispose of sewage is caught to some degree in the zone. So if you're going to a foul, connecting to a foul drainage, that will go to a wastewater treatment works that would then go into in this case, the River Wensum. So it's that additional nutrient load that goes into that wastewater treatment works that they would need to address. So at the minute, there's no nutrient mitigation solutions that are going through.
So, but there are mechanisms that they could employ to do that in theory, isn't there? On site kind of.
If you so if you go to a packaged treatment plant, obviously that packaged treatment plant will process the waste that goes in there, but there will still be an outflow from that packaged treatment plant, which will be cleaner, but not 100% clean. And it's that outflow of the packaged treatment plant that would be the thing that would be assessed under nutrient neutrality. So looking at what's in that water going out of the packaged treatment plant. I mean, manufacturers of packaged treatment plant are obviously responded to nutrient neutrality, and they're putting forward products that are now more effective at reducing phosphates and nitrates, but they're not 100%. They can't guarantee 100% that it will be removed. So the work is afoot. But in this case, I think they've proposed to go to the foul network. So yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Anybody else? We had a proposal and a seconder. We should go to a vote.
Thank you, Chairman. So just to confirm, members are asked to consider the officer's recommendation, which is for refusal. Councillor Beatty?
For.
Councillor Bull?
For.
Councillor Fisher?
For.
Councillor Hankins?
Abstain.
Councillor Patterson?
For.
Councillor MacDonald?
For.
Councillor Neverway?
For.
Councillor Ringer?
For.
Councillor Toy? For. And Councillor Vickers?
Abstain.
That is 8 votes for, 2 abstentions. The vote is carried for refusal of the application.
Thank you very much, everybody. We got anything to do the exclusion of the place?
There are no other substantive items, Chairman.
Okay, thank you, everybody, for coming. That's the meeting finished. Thank you.